Hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive. You know
Yeah.
how sometimes our brains just won't quit?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
like it's a hamster wheel of thoughts and worries just spinning and spinning.
constantly.
Exactly.
Uh,
So today we're going to tackle that beast. We're diving into overthinking and how to tame it, using some ancient wisdom from the Stoics.
Sounds like a plan.
Our guide for this deep dive is a YouTube video called 10 Stoic Ways to Stop Overthinking. It's from the Stoics Inc. channel, and it's packed with practical advice.
The Stoics had a lot to say about overthinking. They were all about understanding what we can control and, more importantly, what we can't.
Especially when it comes to our own minds, right?
Right. They weren't about just ignoring our problems, but finding ways to manage how we react to them.
So it's about taking charge of the control panel in our heads.
Exactly.
Okay, so the first technique they highlight is pretty interesting. Visualizing overthinking as something outside of yourself,
Oh, I like that.
right?
Yeah.
It's like instead of those thoughts being US, they're more like
Like a noisy neighbor.
yes, a noisy neighbor. You
Mhm.
can't stop them from making noise,
Yeah.
but you can choose whether to let it drive you crazy or just kind of fade into the background.
I love that analogy. And it really gets at the heart of what the Stoics were saying about detaching from those intrusive thoughts. One of the big Stoic thinkers, Marcus Aurelius, he said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts."
Wow, that's powerful.
Mm.
So it's not about pretending we don't have negative or anxious thoughts.
Right.
It's more about how much power we give them.
That's it. You have the power to choose which thoughts you're going to really engage with and which ones you're just going to let drift by.
Okay, so that's step one. But then there's this whole other thing, right?
Right.
Getting stuck in the past or worrying about the future. I mean, that's like overthinking on steroids.
Absolutely. The Stoics had a lot to say about that, too. In fact, another Stoic heavyweight, Seneca, he said, "True happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future."
Okay, I love the quote.
Actually.
But realistically, how do we actually do that? Like my to-do list alone is enough to send my mind racing.
Well, the video suggests finding an activity that can fully absorb your attention.
Okay, so something to kind of pull you back to the present moment.
Exactly. It could be something simple, like organizing your desk, going for a walk, or even losing yourself in a good book.
So it's almost like shifting gears, giving your mind a break from all that mental gymnastics.
Right. Instead of being swept away by the current of your thoughts, you're actively choosing where to steer the boat.
I like that, steering the boat.
Yeah.
But what about those times when you have legitimate worries,
Mhm.
things you can't just ignore?
That's where the Stoic concept of impermanence comes in.
Impermanence.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What does that even mean when we're talking about overthinking?
Well, think of it this way. Everything changes, even our thoughts. Remember that time you were totally stressed out about insert a relevant example from listener notes?
Right.
How do you feel about it now?
Probably not as intense, right?
Yeah, definitely not keeping me up at night anymore.
That's impermanence in action. It's recognizing that nothing, not even our worries, is truly permanent. So instead of getting tangled up in those thoughts, we should try to just let them go.
Exactly. Imagine those thoughts like leaves floating down a river. They're passing through, but they're not defining you.
Okay, I can see how that would be helpful.
Mm.
But let's be real. Sometimes we have worries that need our attention, like actual problems that need solving.
Absolutely. And the Stoics have a technique for that too. It's called designating a worry period.
A worry period.
Okay.
Now, I'm really curious. Tell me more.
It's simple but effective. You set aside a specific time each day, maybe 15, 20 minutes, to confront those worries head on.
So it's like giving those worries their own designated space and time instead of letting them run wild all day long.
Exactly. You're not suppressing them, but you're also not letting them take over your entire day. And there's this great quote from Epictetus that really fits here. He said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid."
That's an interesting one. So sometimes finding inner peace means letting go of the need to appear perfectly in control all the time.
Exactly. And sometimes that involves breaking things down into smaller, more manageable chunks, which leads us to another Stoic technique, turning overwhelming thoughts into actionable steps.
Because let's face it, those big worries can feel like a giant wall you just can't climb.
Right. Where do you even begin?
Hmm.
Well, Marcus Aurelius had some wisdom for that too. He said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way."
Whoa. Okay, so instead of getting stuck in the enormity of the problem, we should ask,
Yeah.
what's the very next step I can take?
Exactly. Not the whole solution, just one small action.
It's about moving from that feeling of being paralyzed to actually taking action, even if it seems small.
Each step builds momentum. You start chipping away at that feeling of overwhelm. And overthinking isn't always about those big life problems. Sometimes it's just getting stuck in a negative spiral, focusing on what we lack or what we haven't achieved.
Oh yeah, our brains are experts at highlighting all the things that are wrong.
Yeah, right. And that's where the power of gratitude comes in. Remember Seneca's quote about enjoying the present? Well, gratitude is all about appreciating what you already have right now.
So it's like shifting our focus from what's missing to what's already present in our lives.
Exactly. And the video suggests a simple practice. Try to identify 3 things you're grateful for each day. They don't have to be huge things. Even small things like a cup of coffee or a sunny day can shift your perspective.
Yeah, it's easy to overlook those small joys when we're caught up in our thoughts.
But they're often the things that bring us the most happiness. So by actively noticing them, you're actually training your mind to see the good, which can be incredibly powerful when you're battling negativity.
I'm definitely going to try that. But sometimes my overthinking is all about the future, obsessing over outcomes, especially things I can't control.
That's a common one. And it brings us to another Stoic principle, shifting our focus from outcome to effort.
So instead of agonizing over results, we should focus on what we can control, our actions and our intentions.
Exactly. Epictetus said, don't explain your philosophy, embody it. It's about doing your best, putting in the work, and letting go of the need to control the outcome.
So it's almost like taking the pressure off.
Absolutely. It allows you to really focus on the journey, the process of growing and learning, instead of getting fixated on the destination. But sometimes we get stuck in our comfort zones, afraid to take risks or try new things.
Oh yeah, for sure. Is there a Stoic approach for that too?
There is, and it might sound a little counterintuitive. Embracing voluntary discomfort.
Voluntary discomfort. That sounds interesting. What does that actually mean?
It's about intentionally stepping outside your comfort zone, doing things that might feel a little challenging or unfamiliar.
Okay, I see where you're going with this. But what are some examples?
It could be something small, like taking a cold shower or choosing to walk instead of drive.
So it's about exposing yourself to discomfort in small doses to build up your resilience. Like maybe instead of dreading that big presentation, you could practice speaking up more in smaller settings.
Exactly. Marcus Aurelius had this great analogy. He compared the art of living to wrestling, not dancing. Life throws challenges at us, and by embracing discomfort in small ways, we can be more prepared to face those bigger challenges with more grace and courage.
It's like building up our mental muscles, so we're not so easily thrown off balance by all the curveballs life throws at us. Wow, this is great stuff. I think we need a minute to process all this Stoic wisdom.
I agree. Let's take a quick break, and then we'll dive back in with even more techniques for taming that overthinking.
Sounds good. See you in a few.
All right, we're back. And our mental toolkits are already brimming with Stoic techniques. It's like we're gearing up for a mental marathon, right?
Definitely Stoicism. It's not about quick fixes. It's about building habits for a lifetime. And speaking of lifetime, this next technique fits perfectly. Reflecting on life's transience.
Okay, getting a bit philosophical here.
Yeah.
But how do I actually apply that to, my everyday worries?
Well, Seneca, he had a great way of putting it. He said, we are not given a short life, but we make it short, and we are not ill-supplied, but wasteful of it. So it's about remembering that everything changes, even those things that are stressing us out right now.
Exactly. Our worries, our fears, they're not permanent.
So like when I'm freaking out about meeting a deadline, I should just ask myself, will this even matter 5 years from now?
Exactly. Often when we step back, we realize the things we're stressing over are just tiny blips on the radar.
It's all about perspective.
Yeah.
Right. Remembering that our time is precious and choosing to focus on what truly matters.
You got it. And finally, we come to the last technique in the video, seeking wisdom beyond yourself.
Ah, yes. The power of outside perspectives. Sometimes we get so stuck in our own heads, we can't see the forest for the trees.
Exactly. And Seneca, he was a big advocate for this. He said, consult your friend on everything, especially on matters concerning yourself.
So it's about reaching out to others for guidance, getting those fresh perspectives that we might miss on our own.
Precisely. It could be a friend, a mentor, or even a good book. The key is to step outside of our own echo chambers and let other voices inform our thinking.
Like having a mental pit crew ready to help you troubleshoot those overthinking patterns.
I love that analogy. It takes a village, right? So there you have it. 10 Stoic techniques, from visualization and present moment awareness to gratitude and seeking external wisdom.
Wow, that's a lot to unpack. What stands out to you the most from all of this?
I think for me, it's that idea of focusing on the present moment. It's such a powerful antidote to overthinking bringing us back to what we can actually experience and control.
Yeah, it's like hitting the reset button on our minds. And it ties in perfectly with that quote from Seneca about finding true happiness in the present. But let's be honest, putting all this into practice, it's easier said than done right.
Oh, absolutely. It takes practice, consistency, and a willingness to be patient with ourselves. Even those Stoic philosophers, they didn't achieve mental mastery overnight. They saw it as a lifelong journey.
So it's about progress, not perfection.
Exactly. Be kind to yourself as you experiment. Some techniques will resonate more than others. The key is to find what works for you and keep practicing.
It's like learning any new skill. It takes time and effort to build up that muscle memory.
And the more you use these Stoic tools, the more effective they become. You'll start catching yourself in those overthinking patterns earlier and redirecting your thoughts more easily.
It's about building that mental agility, being able to navigate those challenging thoughts without getting completely swept away. Wow, this has been so insightful. I feel like I have a whole new perspective on overthinking and some real strategies to try out.
That's great to hear. And remember, this deep dive, it's just the beginning. We encourage you to keep exploring Stoicism. There are tons of resources out there, from books and articles to online communities.
That Stoic Sync YouTube channel we mentioned is a great place to start.
Absolutely. And of course, don't forget to check out our other deep dives. We have a whole library of episodes on other fascinating topics.
We're always exploring new ideas and sharing what we learn, so be sure to stay tuned for more deep dives coming soon. But before we wrap up this episode, let's take a moment to reflect on what we've discussed today.
Oh.
Which of these Stoic techniques really struck a chord with you?
How can you use these insights to quiet those noisy thoughts and find a little more peace in your day-to-day life?
Remember the journey to a calmer, more resilient mind. It's an ongoing one, but it's a journey worth taking. We've covered so much ground in this deep dive. It's really amazing how much practical wisdom the Stoics had to offer.
I know, right? And the best part is it's not just about absorbing the information, it's about actually using it.
Exactly. It's like having all these tools in our mental toolkit.
And the more we use those tools, the better we get at handling those tricky thoughts.
So as we wrap up, I'd love for you to think about which of these Stoic techniques really resonated with you the most.
Yeah. Which one kind of jumped out and grabbed you? Was it that visualization technique, picturing your worries like noisy neighbors?
Or maybe it was the idea of shifting your focus to the present moment.
Each technique offers a slightly different approach to taming those overthinking patterns.
And ultimately finding a little more peace of mind.
Exactly.
And it's important to remember that it's not about reaching some perfect state of, total zen or anything.
It's about progress, not perfection.
It's a journey, and the Stoics, they're like these wise guides along the way.
I like that. They're like our mental mentors.
Yeah, exactly. So on that note, I want to thank you all for joining us on this deep dive into taming your overthinking.
It's been a pleasure exploring these Stoic techniques with you.
And remember, the journey to a calmer mind. It's ongoing, but with the right tools and a little bit of practice, it's a journey worth taking.
Absolutely.
Until next time, keep those mental tools sharp and keep diving deep.